Hi, my name is Jim Gibson, and today I want to talk to you about who controls the K12 education system in California. I bet you don't know. Most people don't. But in reality, it's a California Teachers Association. They shouldn't call themselves an association. They should call themselves what they are: California Teachers Activists Political Organization, because that's what they really are. You know, it's kind of interesting that when you think about it, at election times, you always hear the California Teachers Association, and I'm just going to call them what they like to be called themselves. But what they actually do is they'll put on a bunch of radio spots and say, all kids deserve to learn, and not all kids learn the same way, and teachers do this and teachers do that and everything else, and it just sounds so warm and fuzzy. I mean, you drive down the street and you see those little signs on the side of the street that say, teacher's choice for school board, this is the person, and all the teachers endorse this particular person, and if you love children and apple pie and everything else, a lot of times you see a little apple on there, then you'll vote for this person. And then you'll get mailers and you'll get phone calls and sometimes radio commercials and things like that this is the person that's going to turn education around today. And it's not. It's usually been picked by the teachers union to run. Now, a teachers union has lots of money, even locally. They charge teachers over $1,000 a year, and like at our school, where I was on the board for 20 years, we had 1,200 teachers. 1,200 teachers given $1,000 a year to the teachers union. Most of that went up to the California Teachers Association, and I heard that they make over $300 million a year in revenue from teachers. And then they take that money and they use it in campaigns. Not only school board members, they spend money on school board members, but also for state assembly, state senators, Congress, governor. So you wonder, you look at California and you say, man, 30 years ago, California was a pretty good place politically. They were pretty together. They were concerned about taxpayers. I don't know, have they ever been concerned about taxpayers? I have my doubts. But at any rate, they were different than they are today. Today, California were hyper left-wing politics. And most of the assemblymen and the state senators, and definitely the governor and Congress and all, have been paid for entirely with union dues. The union is a very political activist organization, very extreme left-wing. They're not interested in education because if they were, they wouldn't kill some of the programs that are out there. I remember my board did away with a whole school, and it was the second most improved elementary school in the state of California, and yet they closed it down. And they were arguing about it, how bad it was. It wasn't bad, it was a great school. The students were learning. When I first started there, and on the school board over 20 years ago, it had this one school had a 17% literacy rate, and I was horrified. And when I would talk to the superintendent about how he could actually go home at night and not think about this, he kind of just laughed at me, kind of chuckled, mumbled, because he never did anything anyway. But to make a long story short, finally a principal got in there, and the teachers got with the principal, and they turned this school around. The second most improved, I think it's actually the most improved school, but people sometimes on the other side want to correct me. It's the second most improved school, which means this was a success. But in the minds of the activists on the left side, no success will go unpunished, because we want equal outcome, not successful. We don't want to I mean, we should have brought those teachers in and given them awards, but teachers don't usually get awards unless the union's 100% on their side and supporting them. So this is going to be a hard-hitting video today because I'm going to talk about a lot of these things. So how does this happen? So first of all, when it comes to local elections, local school board elections in the state of California, this is how they're run. The activist union will only allow activist teachers and supporters to be part of their decision making. And they treat it like they're a union because that's what they are. So they want the highest wage possible with the lowest amount of requirements. I mean, they argue about how many minutes a teacher should spend in the classroom. And they're down to the minutes. And it is the minimum that the state requires. And that's what they negotiate each time. Now, it's kind of interesting when they're negotiating raises and things like that in this time and how teachers are going to be treated and everything else. Who are they negotiating with? But they're negotiating with people who, if you give the teacher a 5% raise, when the agreement is signed, they will get a 5% raise too. So where is the support for the taxpayers and the parents there? It's like both sides are on one side. If the teachers want a 5% raise, then the administrators get the 5% raise. So it doesn't seem fair and it's not right. But let's get back to the campaign, local campaign. So when you have a local campaign, so you need to order signs. And the average person, the average mom and dad who want to run for school board, they don't know where to order their signs from or what company does these signs and things like that. They just need to get that literature, and they don't know how many to order. They don't know where are you going to get the money. I mean, one time I ran in Vista, I had over 3,000 signs because they would steal my signs, and I had enough to replace them, and I had no problems. But I had 3,000 signs, and for a small community, that was a lot of signs. So to make a long story short, where do these mom and dads and local citizens find out the mechanics of running a school board election? And they don't. It's really hard. You got to get flyers. You got to know where to call the people who put out those little mailers. You got to know where to get your list from, where these mailers come from. If you're working full time, it's almost impossible. And you're running against a machine that does these races every 2 years, and they have experts and they have lawyers, they have campaign managers that come down and teach their people that they want on the board how to run an election. And most of these people who run endorsed by the teachers union, they don't even need to put a sign in the ground. The union will go out there and put the signs up for them. The union will sign them up for different things. The union will set up how to win a certain race and the details, and they'll notify the media and things like that. And some media are onto this, by the way. I noticed that when I was on the Vista School Board, that some media is onto that. It was kind of interesting being the only conservative on the school board for most of the time I was there. That when the other side would say something in the media, they would have to come to me, the lone person on the school board that was a conservative. They would come to me and they would ask me my opinion of the subject. So I was on the media a lot more than the other people on the board. But they set these people up, and a lot of people say, well, just go out and they pick good people. No, they don't. They're a machine. They're a political machine. They make sure that the person they're going to endorse and put money on is a person that's going to support them 100% of the time. 100% of the time. There is no wavering. I remember a couple of those trustees that I would spend time with, and I would map out something that I thought was important, and they would agree with me. They'd say, yeah, that's a great idea. And they would vote with me. And then the next time they ran, the union didn't support them. And every single time, they did not win in those elections. So you agreed too much with the conservative on the board, the person that's representing the parents and the taxpayers, well then you will not get our money. I remember one time being in a board meeting. It was kind of interesting. This is an interesting story. Bear with me with this. I was in a board meeting and I was debating something, and I don't even remember what it was. But surprisingly, I got the other 4 to agree with me on this issue. Now, I usually won on issues when parents and taxpayers showed up and commented on it, and they did it in force. Then they agreed. But in this case, I don't remember what happened. And we always had large crowds, 100, sometimes more. Sometimes we filled up a whole gymnasium with people for our board meeting. But in this case, they won. Or I won in the argument, and they voted with me. But I noticed in the back that the teachers' union people, they were upset. They were talking back and forth with the leadership there, and they were mad, and they were this, and they were that. And and so I thought, well, they must have voted the wrong way. Well, I got a phone call the next day, 8 o'clock in the morning, from one of the administrators. And there's some good administrators there, don't get me wrong. There's some fantastic teachers also. Not everyone is in lockstep. But the administrator said, look, I got a phone call at 4 o'clock in the morning after the board meeting last night. And this board member asked me to put this item back on the agenda. And I said, oh, that's kind of interesting. He said, yeah, they were all meeting together at somebody's house. And I said, oh, that's interesting. That is actually a violation of the law. In California, you have a thing called a Brown Act, that you cannot get together with a board majority and discuss issues leading to a decision, even though that happened often in these boards and all the time, because there's really no teeth in the Brown Act. There's nothing that you could do. So sure enough, the next month's meeting came up, and that action item was back on the board, and they wanted to vote on it. And I said, absolutely, let's vote on it. So they voted on it, and it was a 4-1, and they were all happy. Now, we had a break. We had to take a break. 2 hours sitting there listening for 2 hours is not comfortable. So we take a break, and I said, now, fellow board members, fellow trustees, I want to ask you this question. I understand that you met together in this person's house at this time, and that that is a violation of law. And that's why you're voting today the way you're voting. And I said, now we're going to have a break, and our lawyer is out here in the audience. And I would ask you to go and talk to that lawyer, because I have proof you met at that time. And so you need to talk to that lawyer to find out what your legal jeopardy that you have now. And then when you come back, we'll discuss it some more. So they went and talked to the lawyer and everything else, and after the break was over, they came back. And they said, yes, we violated the Brown Act. Wow, that is amazing, the integrity you have when you have proof. Or the other side has proof on it. So I said, okay, well, you voted on it, so we're going to have to bring it back on the agenda, and you're going to have to vote on it again. So they agreed that they violated the Brown Act. And you can't do this in California. It's against the law. Now, is there any penalty or anything? No, there's no penalty. That's why it has no teeth. But they came back the next month with the same agenda item, and of course they voted 4-1. So the teachers union really controls the board, and the board controls the principals, and the board controls the superintendent on the board. And they control just about everything else. How the budget's going to be spent. I'm always amazed. We always get extra money, and it seems to go to programs like $5 million reading programs that all of a sudden become the most successful thing in the world. And other things. Someday I'll talk about gray light. Now we spend a lot of money, the taxpayers' money, to change the light fixture so we could have gray light. I'm still waiting to figure out what gray light is. I voted against that silliness. But it was gray light. So make a long story short, these people, and I always point towards the left because usually I was at the end and they were always to my left, both politically and physically. These people vote exactly like they're told to vote. I'm always amazed. I show up at a board meeting and I have all my notes, everything else. I studied everything else, and all of a sudden they're all talking and agreeing on a subject that I knew nothing about. No one gave me brief notes on it. No one talked about this. No one gave me, background on what this discussion is. That's because they have had discussions with their masters, the union president. So who runs the school district? It's going to be the teachers union. And what is the purpose of a union? And I understand their purpose. It's minimum amount of work for maximum pay. And in this case, they have one overriding principle above that, and that is political agenda. Now, what I'm interested in is math, science, real history, not this nonsense that I have heard over and over again that I had to see my own kids suffer through when they were younger. Math, science, history, things like that. That needs to be the focus. English, reading needs to be the focus in school. Not political stuff and not new programs, not CRT, not talking about how everybody's a racist except the person calling everyone a racist. And the latest woke information. I am not woke, by the way. Cancel me. I don't really care if you want to cancel me. That's fine. I don't think you can. I own my own business, and you can't cancel me. I'll speak my mind whenever I want, wherever I want, whenever I want. So it was kind of interesting that all these people were voted into office based on money that they got from the teachers union. They know if they disagree with the teachers union, they will be voted out of office. It's happened time and time and again. Well, how in the world did I win? Isn't that interesting? I remember once that the teachers union president came to me, and I was coming up for re-election, and he said, "Hey, you're going to go down, man. We are going to vote you out of office. You are going to lose." He's like, "Yeah, how am I going to lose? Please tell me. Please tell me." See, as a businessman, I have my own money. So I can buy my own signs. I can buy my own literature. I can do things like that. I have parents behind me that tell their friends next door. I have good teachers that aren't going to distribute paperwork to their parents when they show up to pick up their children. By the way, that's against the law. Can't do that, but they still do it. And I said to him, how am I going to lose? He goes, because the teachers are going to vote against you, and we have 1,200 teachers. And I said, well, first of all, 1,200 isn't going to make, it will make a difference in the election. But let's talk about that. You have 1,200 teachers. Well, half of them don't live in my district. So now we're down to 600. Half of them aren't even registered to vote. So now we're down to 300. And those who are registered to vote, a lot of them really don't care, one way or the other. And a lot of them are on my side already. They've seen that I've supported them and protected them and everything else, and did everything I could to help them in the classroom. So I don't think I'm going to lose. And sure enough, I came in number 1 that year. But it does take money, it does take volunteers, it does take getting your message out. I remember one time I was talking in public, and the union was talking to the board, the president of the union, and he was saying how he took this person out to lunch and this person out to dinner, and he took all the other 4 out to dinner. So I wanted to toy with him a little bit. And I said, "What? Am I a potted plant that you don't even take me out for coffee?" And of course they called me up that week kind of like, well, okay, I guess we have to have the appearance of fairness. And so I went out to Starbucks with them, and we sit there and chit-chatted, and I listened to all their concerns and things like that. And then they said, "Well, do you have any concerns?" I said, "Yeah, I don't like how you treat my teachers." And he said, "What do you mean your teachers? They're our teachers." I said, "No, they're not. You forced them to be in your union. They work for me for free." Not free, but they free will, they work for me. And I said, so they're really my teachers. I represent them. You guys do a horrible job of representing them. And they got a little indignant. And they said, "How can you possibly say that? We're the protection union and all." And I said, "Well, you guys never show up in closed session when we have a disciplinary problem with a teacher. You're never there defending that teacher. I've never heard you in all these years, and still 20 years on the board, never saw them once." And I said, "Isn't that what you tell all the teachers, that you're there to protect them?" And, no answer type of thing. And then I turned around and I said, let me ask you one question. You collect all these union dues. Why do they all go to Sacramento? Well, we support certain propositions, and we support certain other people that support public education. I said, why don't you leave some of that money here to help the teachers that are here? Maybe we can provide extra courses for them. Maybe we can help some who maybe were in a car accident or something, with a car, with things like that. We could help these teachers that are here. We could take the young teachers, the ones that are just out of college, and we could teach those or help those teachers become excellent teachers. And you have the money, you have the resources to do it. And of course they said no. I said, well, how about this? How about if you let your teachers vote on it? Why don't you hold a meeting? We're going to support this proposition up in Sacramento, and we're going to send 90% of your tax money for that proposition. And they said, no, we're not going to ask teachers what they think. We're going to do what we think is right. And I said, well, I bet you if you ask teachers, the majority of them would not vote for the propositions that you are forcing on the state of California. The propositions that the California Teachers Association is forcing on the rest of us here and the candidates that they're endorsing. Why don't you ask the teachers who they endorse? Are you afraid? And of course they couldn't give me an answer. I heard a phrase once years ago, nothing changes until you change. And I'm running for State Superintendent of Public Instruction, and I bet you don't even know what that is. That's the highest elected official in public education in the state of California. But I bet you don't know about that. Now, I'm not here to shame you, because the guy up there now doesn't do anything. He does do things that I'm going to discuss in another video that you might be surprised at. But he really doesn't do anything for teachers. He really doesn't do anything for your students or your community or anything else. But he's 100% supported by the California Teachers Union. 100% supported. He doesn't have to do anything. He can sit home and eat potato chips during a campaign because they're the ones going to campaign for him. And you're going to hear their endorsement. Teachers endorse this person. And anytime you hear that, you just need to vote for someone else. Because it's not the teachers, it's the teachers union. But they claim the teachers support this person, but they never ask the teachers. But to make a long story short, before him, there was another loser, and you have all this long list of losers all the way up to the 70s, all the way back to the 70s. And these people care two hoots about you. They're just there to get paid in a political position. They used to be a state senator or an assemblyman, and someone said, hey, you should run for this position and we'll support you because you always voted our way in the assembly. And so they run and they don't do anything, and they have a nice cushy job, a car and all sorts of perks and everything else. They don't really need to do anything. They don't do anything at all. Nothing has changed in 20 years. You ever ask yourself why they keep on asking for money? And have you ever seen have you ever seen an improvement in education? So we keep on giving money, 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 taxpayers' money. I'll tell you, it's not a money problem in public education. And I'll tell you how you can figure this out. Because private schools are half as expensive and twice as efficient. Private schools. They don't have the tax-exempt cars in their motor pool. They still have to pay tax on their buildings. They still have expenses, health insurance and things like that. Yet the cost of sending a kid to a private school, an average private school, sending a student to an average private school is half the expense of a public school. You would think that they get twice as much money, they get all these buildings through bonds and stuff like that built for them. All the built-in support and everything else they get, that they would produce students that were better capable in the real world than what they produce. So the best ones, the highest educated children going through school right now is going to be homeschoolers. Then you're going to have the next group that's really doing an excellent job for the most part is private schools. And then, of course, charter schools after that. But the bottom line is on all this, that it's twice as expensive public school and half as efficient as private schools. And it's been that way for years. We just keep on giving more and more money, and we get less and less results. That's why I decided to run for state superintendent of public instruction. I am not afraid to go against the powers. I sued them and won, by the way. I sued the CTA and the NEA and won. So the bottom line is I'm not afraid to go against these people. And I know what needs to be done. 20 years experience on the local school board. And usually at each race I came in number one. They've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars against me. But I'm more interested in the parents, and I'm more interested in focusing on the basics. No more political trash being taught, especially in history. So I could tell you story after story, but then you won't listen to the end. Please give me a thumbs up if you agree. Please subscribe to this YouTube account and ring the bell so next time I do another video that you will be notified that there's another video. And I look forward to talking with you in the future. You have a great day. Thank you for watching.